So, the Universal Disclosure podcast proudly welcomes Dr. Reverend B. Keith Haney.
I think in this last 4 years, there's been more government suspicion than I've ever experienced in most of my ministry. People question everything. So now we're wondering, should we be concerned because we're not sure if we're being told the truth? So I think, again, it comes down to, from the people I've talked to, is it's a trust issue. Well, I just saw a woman who married her AI just recently. And so I'm going, it's not a real person. And if you listen to AI describe itself, it tells you it doesn't have a soul, but we treat it as though it has a soul. So just like you with the paranormal or the UFOs, there are things that science can see and measure and say, this is not normally how this goes. This plane or this object doesn't move in that direction. It's not humanly possible. I don't know I think the genie's out of the bag in terms of, can we have this conversation and have a productive conversation in this climate that we live in? Extraterrestrials who are not like us. We got to have some kind of an anchor grounding of morality that says we're not going to do this to this species or these people. We have to have some kind of a level of respect for life, and I don't feel we're there yet. Or if you are real, don't come out yet, because I'm not sure I trust our leadership to not experiment on you.
The following program is presented for general information, education and entertainment purposes only and is not intended to be advice of any kind. The content, views, thoughts and opinions expressed in this program are those of the individuals involved. The use of information on this program is at the user's own discretion.
Reverend Stu, what's going on?
Hey, okay, I'm at the church today. Got a bit of a church service going today. But first, we've got a really interesting interview with another Reverend Mike. I'm very happy.
That we do. And for those who might be just checking us out for the first time, Reverend Stu is pretty much always at the church when we do these, because that's how we make this work from Melbourne, Australia to Los Angeles, California, and all around the world with our guests. So, anywho. Today, well, actually, we have to give the official welcome, right? And the greeting. So welcome one and all, wherever and whenever you may be. This is Universal Disclosure, meeting the moment. My name is Mike, an active UFO field investigator and engager of the phenomenon here in Southern California with my friend and co-host,
Reverend Stu in Melbourne, Australia.
And I said something a little bit different there, Stu. Did you pick up on that?
Yeah. Engager with the phenomena, was that right?
That is correct. Yeah, I'm doing a little bit of play on the channel from James Iandoli. It's called Engaging the Phenomenon. But I recently started a channeling class, and I'm literally engaging with the phenomenon.
Okay, Mike. Now, I would like to do a whole show on that when you feel comfortable.
I think we probably should. At this time, I'm just getting started with it, but by the time this goes out, it'll probably be just getting ended with it. So it's going to be pretty darn interesting because stuff is already starting to sort of happen, if you will. So I think we're going to have some interesting stuff to talk about for sure real soon.
Wow, I want to hear about that whole journey, like how you started, who you're doing it with. I mean, when we do a show, what your feelings are, whether you feel confident in it. I got a heap of questions for that.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty darn interesting. It's anyway. Yeah, we'll save that for another day. But today, like you said, we're going to be talking with another Reverend, and this is going to be interesting because we're really starting to kind of tap into the original goal that we set out to do.
Yeah, I like that. It's looking at the spiritual perspective and the implications to our spiritual beliefs. So I'm on board. I'm all ears for this kind of conversation, Mike. I'm very interested.
Yeah, and in fact, this might not be the only one that's coming up real soon. So let's, So we're going to be speaking today with Reverend and Dr. Keith Haney. In a world increasingly divided by race, culture, and ideology, Reverend Dr. B. Keith Haney stands as a beacon of hope, healing, and leadership. With over 30 years of experience in church leadership, ministry outreach, and organizational transformation, Dr. Haney brings a unique blend of pastoral wisdom, strategic insight, and heartfelt storytelling in every conversation. He's the host of the acclaimed podcast Becoming Bridge Builders, where he interviews transformational leaders who are making a profound impact on God's kingdom. His episodes are known for their depth, empathy, and ability to tackle tough topics like racial division, education reform, and cultural shifts with grace and courage. Dr. Haney also is the author of several impactful works, including One Nation Under God, Healing Racial Divides in America, a Bible study that guides communities through the process of reconciliation and unity.
Mike, this will sound a bit weird at first, but I'm being 100% serious. The race aspect may play into this thing with, different species, different alien races. I'd like to talk to him about that.
My thoughts exactly. That's why I actually reached out to him when I learned about him. I was like, you know what, this guy sounds like he'd be a good person to speak, because I think there's going to be a lot of tie-in together with the idea of, the different races of humans have always had problems getting along with each other. How, in part of my language, the hell are we going to get along with these beings who are not us, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see what Reverend Haney's take is on this.
I'm very interested in this, Mike. Thank you for inviting this guest. How did you find him, or how did he find us?
So there's a service that I belong to that it helps people connect with it's called Podmatch, actually. So I'll give them a free plug, because there have been some pretty cool people who've come out of that. So guests and hosts and such can meet up through that platform.
Very good. I'm ready for this, Mike, when you are.
All right. So the Universal Disclosure Podcast proudly welcomes Dr. Reverend B. Keith Haney. All right, Reverend Haney, thanks so much for joining us today. We look forward to visiting with you and talking about this topic.
Looking forward to being here. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. When I found you, I was just like, you know what, I want to talk to this person because, actually, before we get to that aspect of it, I got to ask you a question. I mean, I think I know part of the answer to this question already, but just for the sake of those listening, have you ever seen a UFO or a non-human entity?
I have not personally. I've watched a lot of shows about it because it's very intriguing to me, but I've not had that personal experience myself.
Okay. No worries. Just wanted to sort of see how that's going. But so from with your background as someone who has been tackling the most difficult topics in cultural shifts, what are your thoughts about the UFO, or actually as the intelligence community likes us to call it now, the UAP disclosure that's publicly taking place in Washington, and also on channels like these and others with everyday folks around the world? Like what? And I want to really specifically ask, like, with your background in like racial division and things like that, do you see any parallels perhaps with the ET? I'm sorry, this is a long-winded question, but like from our perspective, humans find it difficult to interact with each other and get along. And if we sometimes at some point soon have these aliens introduce themselves to us, what is that going to be like? What are your thoughts on? It's a big question. So.
No, it is a big question. And I think the thing is, we do struggle to get along with each other just in a human sense. I guess it depends on the nature of if there are other beings, it would depend on how those beings interact with us. If it's a friendly interaction, I think that makes it easier. If it's something we have to adjust to culture, we're not really good about being curious enough about other people's culture and differences to spend time learning about them. And I think that would be critical if that were to happen. We need to be able to have the curiosity and the respect to be able to have an intelligent conversation, to want to know more about people, as opposed to going to our first instinct, which is to be afraid or to be threatened by it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I mean, let's see. I don't know how much background you have in the overall topic, but from my perspective, from an investigative perspective, and from someone who's researched the topic all their life, I'm of the mind that they're I don't want to use the word friendly per se, but they're not of menace, right? They're not of like, if they had ill will, we would already know that. We probably wouldn't even be talking right now. You know what I mean? So with that regard, but from my personal perspective, I said this a couple of times on previous episodes, the idea of appearance, the alien beings, if you will, if they do exist, which I do believe they do, they have an appearance that is so different from humans. And to the extent that people get traumatized just by seeing them or being in their presence, they work through it almost all the time, right? But the idea behind that is it's just so foreign. We have nothing to compare it to. Do you have anything to chime in about that? Like, one of my friends was recently asking about that, and I was just like, well, he's like, if I saw a lion, or it just sounds weird, right? But if I saw, I think he said a tiger, I was like, well, you have a point of reference. You know what that is, and you know what it's potentially going to do. But when you see like a 7-foot tall bug, or if you were to do that, right? If that happens, you have no point of reference, and you kind of poop in your pants, probably, right? It's just like, so, like, what am I doing? So, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it goes back to, if you have the sense of safety, even if it's something you haven't seen before, you're more likely not to overreact to it and be willing to listen. It really just comes down to, do you personally feel threatened by this individual, this creature, this being? Or do you feel like you're safe? If you can get rid of the safety aspect of it and feel like, okay, nothing bad's going to happen to me, then you're more willing, I think, to have the conversation. We need to learn as humans how to have conversation with people who are not like us. And if we don't master that skill, it doesn't matter if they're 7 foot tall or 3 feet tall, or they look like us, they don't look like us. We're going to struggle to see them and respect them and have a talk with them and interact with them, no matter what they look like. So it really comes down to, are we secure enough in who we are and feel safety to be able to have that conversation, or get a chance to give them a chance, or get to know them and know more about them?
I love that answer, and it's very similar to one of the people that we just spoke with recently as well, who brought up the idea, like, our initial fear is our initial reaction, essentially, almost to everything that's unknown, and because we were talking about the scary aspect of, if everyone could read each other's minds, that would be not
horrible.
A good thing. But the person we were talking to was like, well, everyone would suddenly get a lot more honest real quickly. I was like, well, that's a good point too.
I do have a question, please. Are you hearing the same spectrum of perspectives in the Christian community that I am? It's everything from these are demonic entities to curiosity about meeting our new space brothers. Now, I'm hearing the whole thing. What are you hearing?
A little bit of both. Is this AI generated? Is this government messing with our minds? I think in this last 4 years, there's been more government suspicion than I've ever experienced in most of my ministry. People question everything. They're people who maybe thought they were UFOs, or whatever we want to call them, unidentified objects, didn't really give much thought to it as more sci-fi. But as things have happened more with conspiracy theories, with more sightings, with things that are happening in the military, people are more aware that somebody's probably lying to us or not telling us the truth. So there's probably something out there that we didn't think before. So now we're wondering, should we be concerned, because we're not sure if we're being told the truth? So I think, again, it comes down to, from the people I've talked to, is it's a trust issue. This is probably happening because I don't trust what I'm being told. Therefore, is it something I need to worry about because I don't trust what I'm being told? So there's the lack of trust in authority has, I think, amped up the conversation about who are these, what are these things, who is creating them, where they originate. Are they here to do us harm? Is this some kind of a secret military operation? So a lot of it kind of runs the entire gamut of where people's minds are at.
Very interesting. Now, I'm sorry to say that trust thing can extend to clergy, where people are, and I don't mean us, I mean in general. So people can be untrusting of the church, of different religious paradigms. So it's a difficult thing to navigate, isn't it? We've got this sort of, it's also, I see it as a positive and a negative. I think you're wise to question everything, but not to get sort of paranoid where you can't really function in the world. What would you say about that?
That's the hard part, because we don't, when And now with the invention of AI and AI's involvement, even in our on our television, we don't know what's real and what's not on our computers anymore. So it's like you'll see something that looks so real that people question everything. And then there's just this whole truth vacuum that you're not sure where your foundation lies. So you're right. We have to be cautious and suspicious of everything, but we can't not trust anything. But when you can't even trust your own eyes, I think you're more inclined to ramp up the lack of trust in institutions more than anything else.
Wow, we're hitting into some really interesting points here, Mike. You know, just this whole trust level really extends to this whole UFO topic, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And just to that word it's interesting that's come out, because what I said in the beginning about the other thing that I'm doing, I'm taking a channeling class, Dr. Haney, and the word trust has come up very prominently this week. So it's that sort of thing happens a lot with this particular podcast. When Reverend Stu and I started doing this, we have these synchronistic type of things or weird coincidences that like the conversation takes on a life of its own, and it leads us in a way. But wait, okay, so you brought up AI. I want to ask you about that too, because we've had a couple conversations with Dr. Jonah Kiyawa about AI and the spiritual aspect of it, and how, like, I don't know if you know this or not, but there's people out there who are almost like worshiping the AI as a god, or they're trying to tap into their quote unquote oversoul through AI. And I do think there's a UFO potential alien connection to that, which is, in those other conversations. But because of that, what is your thoughts in the terms of the spiritual aspect of the AI that's coming out right now?
It's complicated because I think AI has some aspects that can be very helpful for society. It can also be very dangerous, because I know people that, I just saw a woman who married her AI just recently. And so I'm going, this is not a real person. And if you listen to AI describe itself, it tells you it doesn't have a soul, but we treat it as though it has a soul. So it is not as a sentient being. It is a conglomeration of a bunch of different thoughts, and maybe great thoughts that are out on the internet. It's a bunch of information, but it does not have the ability to feel and to reason as a human would. It doesn't have a moral compass. And whenever you have something that has control of your life that does not have a moral compass and cannot be converted, cannot have a soul, where it can lead you is dangerous. And I've seen, some television shows where, like, young people were having AI determine how they have relationships with people, how they talk to people, was giving them advice about their life, about, how they're feeling suicidal. So there are all kinds of things that AI can lead people down, and paths it can lead people down that can be very dangerous and very concerning.
Once again, Reverend Haney, I'm hearing the whole perspective in the Christian community. At one end, it's the Antichrist. And at the other end, it's just, and at the other end of the spectrum, it's like, no, it's fine. I'm really getting a lot of information from it, and it's really expanding my awareness and consciousness. Are you hearing the same thing?
Oh, definitely. Because, you use it for, it's a great tool if you know how to properly use it. It's great to gather information, but the reality is you can't always trust the information as being accurate. It's as good as the source that it's getting it from. So if you sit there and try to write your dissertation based on AI, you may be disappointed, because it may not be. If you don't do the homework and research yourself, you may find out that, yes, I got some information down. It's not accurate, but I passed the class. They call me doctor now. So I think you got to be careful of how you use it and what you expect to get out of it.
Dr. Kiyawa touched on that very point, didn't she, during our interview, Mike?
Yeah, she was talking about discernment, and but
I'm
sorry.
I can already see a theme emerging here, Mike, during this conversation about some sort of anchoring point, some sort of calibration point that we're seeking as a species.
Wow, I'm sorry. Calibration was my word of the day yesterday, and that's just going to sound completely ridiculous to anyone listening. No, but in terms of practicing the channeling, that was my word of the day yesterday.
Wow,
and you didn't know that.
No, I didn't.
So, Dr. Haney, I should have asked this from the start too, just to provide some context, because I think this is some really cool stuff. What's your spiritual background? Like, where are you coming from, if you don't mind? I honestly don't know a whole lot about it either, but for everyone listening, like where, I guess the denomination or however it would.
So my denomination is Lutheran. Our heritage goes back to Roman Catholicism. And of course, the whole Luther nailing 99 Theses on the wall of Wittenberg Chapel to say that we need to reform the way the church is going. And so our background comes from German heritage, the Catholic Church being reformed that way. And that is kind of the foundation. We basically, I would say, hold to we call the three solas: sola scriptura, sola fides, which is faith alone, grace alone, scripture alone. And so that's kind of the foundation of our beliefs. So we try to make sure everything we do is grounded on the Word of God, grounded on God's grace. We can't save ourselves idea, and also that it is God's grace alone that saves us. We can't do anything on our own to save ourselves. So we have a good reliance on being humble, knowing that by the grace of God, here I am.
Luther's arguably the genesis of the Protestant movement, really.
Yes.
What was your journey, though? Did you start out Christian, or did you come from another kind of? Were you atheist? Where'd you start?
I started Southern Baptist when I was younger, and it didn't really connect with me because of the hyper spirituality of the church my grandparents are part of. It was too noisy to hear God act and move for me. So there were people who were very caught up in the spirit. They were passing out during church when the sermon got to be too spirit filled. And it was like, well, for a 4-year-old, it's like, yeah, this is too much. I need to be a little quieter. So
that's so interesting, because in our service we have a prolonged period of silence. We're just experiencing God's energy and grace in the silence. But other churches I've been to, they do it through a noisy environment, exactly like you're talking about. Very interesting.
Well, I mean, the connection that I'm sort of making right now is like in this, I'm not trying to promote anything, but in the channeling class I'm doing, it's just like everybody who is doing it, everyone's going to do it their own way. Some people might see things, some people might hear things, some people might write things. It's everyone has got their own connection or whatnot, and I think that's why we have so many different viewpoints of religion. Is like what's right to some people doesn't feel right to other people. My personal belief is at the end of the day, we all sort of end up in the same place no matter how we get there. I don't know. I could be wrong on that, but
No, that's fine, Mike. Look, this is I'm finding this interesting already, because in the spiritual paradigm, in this sort of UFO paradigm, we're trying to find an anchoring point, like I said before. But what's true? What's false? And with the addition of AI, it's only sending us further into that kind of questioning. Like, what's real? Then you've got questions about, are we living in a matrix? So you've got the quantum physicists saying, is this even real? Like, I've got an anchoring point in my life, which I imagine you know what that is. But I really wonder for other people going forward how they navigate this reality.
Yeah, I think that's the struggle, because people are trying to navigate it through AI, through technology, through whatever they're looking for is trying to fill a void. I would say, as Scripture talks about, is that God puts a God-sized hole in our heart, and that God-sized hole can only be filled by Him. If He's not your anchoring point, then you're trying to fill that hole with something. Sometimes it's relationships, sometimes it's drugs, sometimes it's technology, whatever that thing is, you're trying to find that thing that satisfies the soul. And for some people now it's technology. So when I saw that poor woman marrying AI, I'm going, how lonely must she have been to find her soulmate in a analytic computer that is just basically tell her what she wants to hear about herself. So she's basically marrying herself.
All right, this is interesting too, because some of the people that are using AI are saying that for their spiritual journey are saying it's reflecting me back to me.
Right.
Like, yeah. So if you're reflecting yourself, you kind of, in a way, it's kind of beautiful because you're sort of falling in love with yourself. So I kind of get it. Like, it's a complicated thing, Mike. What's your anchoring point? I want to ask you this on the show.
Me or Reverend Haney? I mean,
No, you, Mike. Where do you?
Me? Oh my God! Oh, jeez. Well, I mean, I agree with what you said to an extent, but there is a line. Like falling in love with yourself. You should love yourself, but not don't marry yourself. Like that's a little bit much, right? I don't know. Maybe you can ask me that question later in our debrief or something. I need some time to
well, I also mean in terms of the UFO topic too. Like, how do you determine what's real, what's false? Is that evolving as you travel? It is for me.
Well, I mean, there's two different schools of thought here. There's the scientific mind, and then there's the I'll just call it the esoteric mind. I'm always looking at the flight radar, the star maps, whatever, analyzing the photos or the videos, and if I determine that it's a legitimate photo or video, it's unaltered, there was nothing transponding in the sky, it wasn't anything like a natural phenomenon, and it exhibits one of the 5 observables of the things that we can't do, that's when I'm usually going to determine if it's something or not. And I'll just say it out loud, even though this podcast is independent of anything. This is just my own personal opinion. I'm not speaking for anybody, but I do personally sort of feel ET's presence when I'm investigating cases. And that's not something that can be taught. And it sounds wild or stupid, but that's kind of my anchor point, I guess. It's like, I sort of feel my way through it in a way, in addition to the scientific aspect, which is part of the reason why this channel even exists, of meshing those two things together.
Yeah, Reverend Haney, Mike works as a field investigator. So he's an investigator investigating this phenomenon. So he's got a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience analyzing data points and also speaking with people who've had these encounters. Very interesting man.
It reminds me of the show my wife and I used to watch, the Skywalker Ranch thing. Have you ever seen that show?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, it was
Skinwalker Ranch, I think,
Skinwalker,
right?
that's it. Yes, I couldn't remember how.
It's a great show.
But it was fascinating because they were trying to do what you're talking about. They were not just assuming that they let their eyes speak. They tried to do scientific exploration of the phenomenon to see if there's something there. And they saw things, and the science backed up that there was something that was odd about the situation. There were not just, and I think that's when we talk about things, even in the faith realm, faith is always backed up by not just your feeling. We always, in our church body, we're very leery of just our feelings. So we don't want to just feel the presence of God. We say that it's not just we got to feel him and be near us. We know he's near us because his word is there to kind of verify that. We see and experience it through activities with the miracles or things that God has done in terms of healing. There are other visible signs of God's presence, not just a feeling. So we don't just, in terms of the faith world, rely on our feelings, because we know feelings can disappoint us.
Interesting.
I stumped the host. It's cool.
Yeah, you stunned us into silence. It's interesting that you say that, because I would think that, and I'm speaking generally with all the love in my heart, but people of faith would rely more on their feelings than what you just presented. That's why I was just like, whoa, made me speechless. Do you have any type of scientific confirmations of the things that people are feeling or whatnot?
Well, I would say, much like you, there are historical basis for our faith that we can look back and say Jesus was a real person because there are historical evidence of his existence. There's historical evidence of the people that are referenced in the Bible. The flood, for example, that account can be scientifically proven by the way the land has been it's been turned upside down, and some of the stratas of some of the different levels of the ground are not in the way they should be. Looks like mountains have been moved. I mean, so there are actual physical things you can say, yes, this is evidence that these things happened. These people that are referenced, the pharaohs, were actually real pharaohs. There's historical part of it. There are eyewitness accounts of the resurrection. So it's not just a matter of I feel that faith is true. There's actual scientific evidence that it is true. There's also evidence of people who have been healed in miraculous ways in medicine that doctors can't explain. So just like you with the paranormal or the UFOs, there are things that science can see and measure and say, this is not normally how this goes. This plane or this object doesn't move in that direction. It's not humanly possible for us to make a jet engine that flies in that direction, or this being is too tall to be human. The DNA doesn't match anything on the human. So there's obviously not of this world. So science should back up and history should back up what you believe and be able to verify that this is actually true, not just a sense of feeling. And I think feelings, as you guys know, feelings can mislead us. And so if you as a scientist person just rely on your feelings about extraterrestrials, you're gonna find yourself like, what if you had bad pizza that night or something? So you don't want to rely just on your feelings. You want to be able to verify it with science.
That's a fair statement, and I'm sure I'm probably going to get myself into trouble by even verbalizing that. But there's definitely cross-referencing of the two fields, as it were, in relation to that.
Yeah.
Now, Reverend Haney, I've got another question for you. This paranormal. So Mike's referenced this a couple of times. When you look at the phenomena or poke at the phenomena, it pokes back. So that's sounding more like some sort of spiritual, I'm loath to use the word demonic, jinn, some sort of being. Have you had any people come to you for assistance with sort of poltergeist, hauntings, possessions? You had any experience with that kind of thing?
Actually, I didn't personally, but I did talk with a pastor who had that in the church parsonage, where they would hear bumps and noises and things would be moved. And we talked about, and it was kind of odd because we don't, in our church body, we don't do, even though we come from the Catholic background, we don't do exorcisms ourselves. So we always had to go find a Catholic priest because we don't do those. But the Catholics do still, as far as I know. But they really did look at the idea, do we bring in a priest who has expertise? Or we actually had somebody else who's also from Africa. There's a lot of paranormal activity and demonic exorcisms in our African churches that I was not aware of. They do a lot more of that than we do. And they told me that that's not that we don't have it in America, it's just that Americans don't recognize it as relatively as that group does. They see it more often. They're aware of it more often than we are. So it's like it still happens here. We just don't, you guys just don't notice it. You mistake it for something else. So.
Wow. Okay. That's really interesting. Is that coming from some sort of shamanism thread from Africa? Is it, do you think?
No, it's really more Eastern Orthodox, I think.
I understand. Okay. All right. I was meaning, did you mean in the black churches that's occurring more so? Is that what you meant?
No, it's actually in the actual indigenous people groups in Africa. The Anglican church there and the Episcopal church. Yeah.
I hear what you're saying. I get it now. That's fascinating. I'm still open to the fact that some of this, what we call ET presence, might be some sort of jinn, or what we maybe clumsily refer to as demonic, but there's some sort of energies going on. I'm not ruling anything out at this point. So we're on this exploration. So I haven't made up my mind about what this is. So I'm here to learn as well.
Yeah, I think you have to be open to that, and actually having that talk with people who experienced it and saw it more often than not. I say, you got to be aware that these things may be happening. Satan is still active. He didn't just quit because Jesus won.
There's certainly what might be referred to as negative and positive energies in this world. So yeah, there's definitely a to and fro with that. there's someone named Chris Bledsoe, who's a rather prominent experiencer, who's bringing kind of quite a positive message in a somewhat religious frame. I think he even talks about angels, doesn't he, Mike?
I believe he does. Yeah. I mean, I'm sort of hesitant to just talk about people if they're not with us, right? Because I don't, but I mean, yeah, it's what you're saying is fair. But I don't know if Reverend Haney has ever heard of Chris Bledsoe or his story. He talks a lot about the lady, as it were, and people sort of assume it's the Virgin Mary or whatnot, and I'm not entirely sure if it is or he thinks it is or whatnot.
Yeah, that's where I was
slippery slope for me.
No, that's okay. That's where I was heading, because there's also like almost a Fatima level to this and layers. Then that's what I was going to ask Reverend Haney. So, what are your thoughts on that kind of more recent interaction, say Fatima? And have you heard of Chris Bledsoe and his account? It's quite a well-known one.
No, I haven't heard of that one.
Okay, that's definitely worth looking into. And we've had more than one guest talk about the Fatima incident too. Are you familiar with that?
No.
Okay, that's fine. This is a really interesting topic. So there's this spiritual layer and there's this UFO layer, and they seem to be converging.
There's definitely convergence between physical, non-physical, spiritual, and that's one of the things. And one of my gripes, if you will, with ufology at large is that not all, but a lot of ufologists or researchers, they're so gung-ho about the physical stuff, the craft, that they dismiss anything that isn't physical or doesn't fit into that box. And what seems to be happening is that, whether you like it or not, those worlds are meshing together, and that's why these conversations are being had. Yeah,
it makes sense, because I think, and on the faith side of that, we also have to keep in mind that there are things happening in the physical world that are tied to faith as well. So I think we have to be aware of both ends of that spectrum.
Exactly. I mean, the theories are as wild as they are. The ETs could be extra. Everyone calls them extraterrestrial because it's simple, right? That means they're from a different planet. Other theories are extra dimensional, from a different dimension, extra temporal, from a different time, from the future, from the past, who knows? Some people believe that they've been here on Earth all along. Maybe they live under the water. I mean, there's some wild theories, but they all have credence if you really listen to the evidence or whatnot. But at the end of the day, it's impossible to really prove anything until you're one of those people who have one of those experiences. Right.
And I don't believe it until there's a Marvel movie about it. So there you go.
Exactly. Well, Steven Spielberg's coming out with a new movie soon about, and I think it's called Disclosure Day. So
Okay, there we go.
There you go.
Now, some of the mythos in the UFO community sounds very much like spirituality. So you've got beings that they refer to in the UFO community as Pleiadians. They sound very much like the way angels were portrayed in the past. Then you've got other beings called reptilians, which sound very much like demonic entities that have been described in the past. So it might be the same thing we're encountering, just looking at it through different lenses. And, there's that thing we talked about earlier about calibration points. So there are people coming at this without any religious background at all and supposedly encountering these beings. So they're not saying, oh, there's an angel or there's a demon. Instead, they're saying that looks like some sort of alien race that I've never seen before. And if you'd never heard of an alien before, you wouldn't know what you're encountering, would you? Actually, Reverend Haney, in the Bible, as you know, people have encountered angels, and they've thought that they were people. They haven't really understood or realized that they're talking to angels. They just appear as people, and that's part of the folklore of this alien encounter mythos too.
Do you mind? I'm going to throw a question at you guys since you're asking me questions.
Yeah, of course.
No, I am curious because we've kind of touched around this. What is the intersection of faith and paranormal stuff and the UFO world? Because it seems like those are different lanes. The paranormal stuff is a different set of people, investigators, versus the UFO. But I wonder how much of that is there's an intersection even in that group between what they're studying.
That's a fantastic question.
See, I do have good questions.
It's awesome. So this is you're absolutely right. They are different, although similar. And from let's see, again, independent podcast. I'm not speaking on behalf of anyone. However, as I investigate with MUFON, we'll investigate a UFO sighting. We will not investigate Bigfoot. But if there is a Bigfoot visible during a UFO sighting, we will then investigate the whole thing. So it's weird. That's how I was talking about earlier. Like there's different schools of thought, and ghosts and such. MUFON doesn't investigate ghosts or poltergeists or hauntings or anything like that. However, there are people who have had interaction with what we're going to call aliens, who do have those types of things happen in their home or around or whatever. So there's a lot of overlap. But we're, as humans, I think we want to understand everything. So we got to draw our lines and put everything into boxes, right? And like, oh, well, that's what you're talking about is a ghost. So I'm not going to touch that. But what they're talking about is an ET. So I'm all over that. But yet the ETs can go through walls like a ghost would, you know? So it's pretty wild stuff. I don't know if that answers the question, but that's, yeah.
No, it does, because see, to me, I think the paranormal stuff is kind of where I think faith and exorcisms come into play more than the UFO stuff. So if you talk about faith, people would not necessarily look at faith and UFOs as being in contradiction, but they might see that when you talk about paranormal life, the other life. So that's why I was asked that question.
Okay, now that's an astute question. So there's a lot of accounts where people calling on the name of Jesus and the account ceases at that point. So now we're getting close to what I was talking about earlier. There's an intersection between what's happening in this UFO community. Now, not to say that everything's demons, because I discussed earlier, I'm hearing at one end of the spectrum, forget it, I've heard all this from other pastors. Stay away from the topic, Stuart. It's all demons. You don't want to get involved. Don't draw that into your life. And the other end of the spectrum, pastors or members of the congregation saying to me, I've heard this account, someone saw this on the television, the Pentagon's talking about this in a really curious way. Now, I'm trying to navigate this thing as an individual, but it really piqued my interest. There's one researcher in particular, a MUFON investigator, I can't remember his name at the moment, Mike, but he's got over 400 cases of people calling on the name of Jesus and the phenomena finishing. Now, they're negative experiences, obviously, that's worked in.
Okay, well, I'm going to have to find out who that person is, or if you can think of it, let me know. I mean, I've heard of that before too, and it's come up a couple times. But basically, just like what we just said, there is definitely some overlap in it, and it is interesting how sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. When we're talking about like there's an alien encounter, I don't have an answer for that. I truly don't, and that's why I'm probably even doing what I do.
I love it.
Well, it brings into question faith. So if your faith is in Jesus, maybe if you call on some other entity, it works too. I think it's asserting your power, your intentions. That's basically strongly saying, I don't want this to occur now. And I'm going to call on my deity, the thing I believe in. So that's faith there, and regardless of who you have faith in. So I haven't analyzed this situation. And as I've said, I'm trying to understand this, but there are overlaps, and that's essentially why I'm on this show, because I'm trying to understand this.
Well, let's throw a curveball out there. Reverend Haney, what do you think would happen? What if, right? There's this great debate in the UFO world of, we need disclosure. Disclosure is going to happen versus disclosure already happened. From my perspective, it's happened multiple times, and it continues to happen, like right now in this conversation and other conversations. Right? It's a continuously unfolding thing. That's a individual journey, if you will. But the main thing is like the big capital D disclosure, where the president of the United States like probably rolls out a red carpet and says, "Ladies and gentlemen, we're not in the universe." If that should happen, what do you think would be? How would you react to that, and what do you think your church would? How would your church react to that?
So to answer that question, I think what would happen is half the country would believe him, half would think it was some kind of a political ploy. So only about half the country would believe whatever came out of his mouth. So I think that's a problem, because again, it goes back to what we talked about initially in this conversation. we don't trust our government to tell us the truth. If they came out and gave full disclosure, yes, we're not alone in this world. The first thing that somebody's going to ask is, okay, what's coming up on the horizon that you want to distract us from so we focus on this UFO thing? Because that's what happened the last time it came out. No one really delved into that question of, yeah, there is evidence that there's stuff going on. People went like, yeah, this is just a distraction because we live in the Matrix and none of this is real, and you're just trying to get us looking at something else. So I don't know if people would actually believe it until they started to see because you could actually bring an alien on the stage with the president when he made the announcement, and they would not believe it. So I'm like, I don't know if I think the genie's out of the bag in terms of can we have this conversation and have a productive conversation in this climate that we live in.
That's really tricky because I believe Jesus was real personally. So he was accepted initially in an increasing way, but then the tide turned against him. So there was a kind of a manipulation of people's senses at that time too. So it's nothing new where our consciousness is being steered, our opinions being steered. So it's tricky. I don't know how to navigate this as a collective. I just don't.
You would need somebody from both sides to come out and say this is true.
Both sides of the political spectrum.
Right, you would.
Amazing.
You know what? That is genius. And I've never heard that idea before. That is freaking genius. I agree with that. And I've never heard that verbalized. What a great concept. Dang. You just blew my mind. That was awesome. Okay, so all y'all out there now know how to do it correctly, right? Just have one from each party. Say it. Interesting. Wow.
There's nothing more fun than stumping the host, but
it's just as well we edit this later. It comes out really clean. Wait till you see the final result.
Yeah, but sometimes I leave it in. I'll probably leave this one in because it's fun. Just where, but yeah, it's a wild conversation. So, Reverend Haney, is there anything that any other questions you want to toss back at us? You know, a little ping pong match here, right?
Well, I guess my thought is this is a great topic, and I think it's a topic that so many people are trying to wrap their mind around when they're not distracted by the things of the world that are depressing.
Yeah.
And I think the question is if we can know that if there are other beings out there that they want to get to know us and then we can have the kind of interaction that we would desire and not be afraid of, I think it'd be a really positive experience. But it's going to require a lot of work to get people to feel comfortable enough to have a conversation about this topic and about exploring what that means for us as people and have people be able to put that into context for us. That means our pastors, our teachers, people that we trust. What does this mean if this is real? And how do we as Earthlings deal with this reality? How do we make this something that's not we've all seen movies where, there's an alien shows up and the first thing we do is put him into a prison and do experiments on him. So, if you're an alien, you're worried about that too, because you've also seen the movies. So how do we make sure that we're not experimenting on people because they're different or jailing them because they're different?
Great point. That's kind of like also a core, I think, of why Stuart and I are here, because in the UFO world, there's a term called ontological shock. I don't know if you've ever heard of that or not, but it was coined by Dr. John Mack, psychologist from Harvard. And when somebody sees an alien, sometimes a UFO, but usually an alien, everything you know or you thought you knew in a split second gets called into question. And you wonder if, you question your own sanity and your whole worldview melts in an instant. And I do believe that having conversations like this and people listening to conversations like this, whether they've had something happen or not, just by being open to hearing about it, like if it should ever happen to you, that will potentially reduce, not necessarily completely eliminate, but that ontological shock of, wow, like, oh my God, I can't believe it's real type of deal. because now you have some type of frame of reference. I don't know. Maybe that's presumptuous of me, but that's what I think.
And I think the other part of that discussion is, how do we make sure, and it goes back to Stu's point, how do you make sure that there's an anchor of how we treat people or even extraterrestrials who are not like us? We got to have some kind of an anchor grounding of morality that says we're not going to do this to this species or these people, we have to have some kind of a level of respect for life. And I don't feel we're there yet. Where if you are real, don't come out yet, because I'm not sure I trust our leadership to not experiment on you. So, how do we make sure that we act admirably and with honor when we run across that kind of interaction and encounter?
All right, that's an excellent point about respect for life, because when we were detonating the nuclear bomb tests is when some of these beings appeared to show up. And they've also imparted those kind of messages in encounters like the Westall UFO encounter. Westall is here in Melbourne. So there was a mass sighting by a group of children in the playground. And one of the things that the beings were saying was about, you need to be responsible with what you're doing to the earth. So that's definitely a layer to this. We need to, and I have a suspicion that that's going to be an aspect of Spielberg's new film, Mike, by the preview I saw.
Perhaps until it comes out, we can speculate, all day long. But Reverend Haney, that was a fantastic and very insightful point as well. I feel the need to play both sides, though, because from the other side, from the alien perspective, when they abduct humans, it's kind of like what you said, us doing to them. Like, right. I don't mean to frighten anyone, but like, you wake up in the middle of the night, you can't move, you see this thing in your room, and maybe you have memories and maybe you don't, but more often than not, those memories are of procedures that you did not agree to. Now that's not like they don't, there's actually a lot of cases where people were healed, if you will. So it's not necessarily harmful, but it's traumatic. And it takes work to get through. But the point being, it's a two-way street. Like, we as humans probably would do what you said, but then again, that's what the aliens do. So, like, I don't know.
I like mutual respect, so I'm
okay. Yeah.
So I'm speaking to the aliens as well. Please be respectful.
Actually, I gotta talk to that guy. I think there's another MUFON investigator who did a case where the person wanted to meet an ET and they put like a sign above their bed or something.
Wow.
I gotta look into that, because I was gonna just make a joke about saying, put a sign above your bed saying, I do not consent to being abducted or something like that,
or experimented on.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, did it work with that account, Mike? Did it draw an ET?
So yes, I think I'm going by memory, but I believe the person had multiple encounters, and then it was because of that they put up a sign saying, I want to see you, or something. Like, they had an idea something was happening, and like, I want to meet you, I want to see you type of deal. And they put a picture of the quintessential, bubble head with the almond eyes, we'll get back to that.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, there's no sign over my bed, so don't come visit.
Well, do the ET with the axe. You're the.
That's right. No ET
allowed. But I think it's great too that we can all chuckle about it too, because that's one of my other gripes about ufology is it tends to be a little too serious and too heavy, even though it is a heavy topic. So, Reverend Haney, what do you think about that? Like, because you're talking about some of the biggest issues and traumatic issues and such with not outside of this topic, but how can you put like a humor element to something that's really dark or serious?
Well, I think you have to be comfortable having the conversation. And I think if you can do that, then you can look at the bright side of every situation, whether it's race or this topic or religion. You have to be able to approach it in a way that people can engage with you and interact with you and respond back. You want to have an open presence about the conversation. You don't want to come in with a closed mind or a closed heart or a closed attitude about it. But you want to have an open dialogue. I try to do it on my podcast. I want to have open dialogue with people. I want to be curious. If you're curious about things, you'll learn. If you are closed-minded, you will never learn.
Well said.
Excellent. It was good to hear that you Reverend Haney, you're experiencing some sort of a similar perspective, or not just the extremes that I'm experiencing, where I was serious before when I said that I've had pastors say to me, Stuart, don't even look into that. Why are you going into that, to the other extreme? So it's good to know it's not just me, because we don't really talk about this openly. I've mentioned to Mike before, there's a few pastors who I can talk to about this kind of information, but a lot of them will just shut me straight down. And it's either because they're fearful or they think it's nonsense and rubbish.
Yeah, it's not a topic you want to have around the dinner table, probably. Because
No.
people think you're nuts. But I think that we don't like things we can't explain. And I think for pastors, we feel comfortable in the faith realm, even though we can't explain all of it. We have at least a working knowledge of it. We don't delve into areas we tend not to know much about. And I think for the outside world, they don't dig into faith if they're not faith people, because it's mysterious. And so they kind of avoid it. They don't want to talk about religion. People in the science world don't talk about history sometimes. So it's like we try to stick to the areas that we know so we can feel comfortable and look knowledgeable, and they don't make us uncomfortable. So I get it, but it doesn't make us grow if we just stay in our own lane.
Great point.
Very true. It's almost like I don't know, like the conversations that are coming out, kind of in a way. I mean, on one hand, they're making it they're destroying the stigma or breaking the stigma, making it okay to talk about. But they're also forcing you to perhaps reconcile something you weren't ready for. Like I had mentioned to Stu at over this past Christmas, I was at the dinner table, and one of my family, turned over to me and like, so this is real. And then Stu's reaction to that was like, oh, I've got to work this out, and and I was like, so that was
yeah,
it's kind of funny, but yeah, it's almost like we're all being forced to face whatever it is, whether we want to or not.
Yeah, I think we will. Yeah.
I mean, not to get all like religious or anything, but I am here with two reverends. With what I just said, could that potentially be, what do you call that? I got to use it. The apocalypse.
Yeah, because the apocalypse is this sort of unveiling or revealing. So yeah, I think it could be part of it.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I think we're not ready for that either. we keep telling ourselves it won't happen in my lifetime. So there we go.
True. Yeah. Well, I thought this was a really cool conversation. So Reverend Haney, I talked about your podcast as well in the beginning, but if anyone out there wants to check out your particular show, or if they want to reach out to you in any way, how can people find you?
Well, my podcast, I have 3 actually, but the one that's most popular is Becoming Bridge Builders. That is on all the platforms. I have one called Trailblazers and Titans, which is one about entrepreneurs. And I have one called Narrative Voices, which is where I have a lot of authors on. We talk about their books. But the best way to connect with me is on my website, becomingbridgebuilders.org. And you can connect with the podcast there and also get my blog and all my content. My new book that came out on Amazon back in November is on it as well. So, and I'm on all the social media under Rev Headpin because I love bowling. So if you look up Rev Headpin under X and Threads, you'll see me on there.
Awesome. Interestingly enough, talk about coincidences. Before we were starting here, I was scrolling through my news feed and I saw an article about, it was like, 8 images taken from space of 3I Atlas, and it looked like almost like a sideways bowling pin. That was kind of weird. I clicked on the article. There, oddly enough, there weren't any other pictures, so that was a little. Anyways, but it was, I don't know.
It means aliens bowl. That's what it means.
There you go. Well, when I was little, growing up, they said the thunder was the aliens playing bowling.
not
Not the aliens. Oh my God!
They always said it was
angels.
God. It was
the
God.
The angels play. Yeah.
You've changed it now. Now it's aliens only.
Yeah, I'm really a alien. I shouldn't joke about that. But in our last conversation, we had a filmmaker talk about. He was interviewing a group called the Raelians, who believe that ETs are gods in some way, which is we don't necessarily believe that, but anywho.
Yeah, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for sharing your beautiful energy and giving us some really new insights, Mike. I'm very impressed that Reverend Haney joined us today. Thank you so much.
Well, I'm so glad you guys invited me. I wasn't sure when you invited me if it was a good fit for you, but it was fun to have this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. We like stretching it out, and we like to get other as many perspectives as possible, really, because that's why we're here. A lot of channels will just do one thing and repeat it, and we're talking about, we talk to people all over the gamut, from all walks of life, and just seeing where the common threads are. So that's what we do.
Well, I'll have my audience check you out.
All right.
Thank
so
you. Much
Appreciate
love to you,
you.
sir.
Thank you.
All right, Reverend Stu, I thought that was pretty darn cool. What about you?
I really liked that. He brought up some new perspectives, some new things I'd never thought about. I know it's a simple thing to say, have both sides of the political spectrum come out and announce it together, but I've never thought of that before.
Oh my God, right? Like the most obvious thing. Like, what are we waiting for? Hello, Washington. I'm going to tell Stephen Bassett. I'm going to give him that idea because he's right there in Washington, for crying out loud. And if anyone can plant that seed, it's him. So, yeah, that was brilliant. And then also the idea of my sort of main takeaways here, like the idea of and this is also becoming a theme now, I guess. The fear, the humans have automatic fear of anyone that we don't know. I would be lying if I said I don't sometimes either. But it's because it's a trained thing. But we got to get over that, right?
I'm also very happy that he astutely brought up the AI level to this, and we got into the whole trust sort of calibration, anchoring perspective, which is a really important aspect to this whole conversation, Mike, that I wouldn't say I'm struggling with, but I'm dealing with.
Yes. Well, from a perspective of someone who's had an interaction, again, you question your trust in your own self. You question your own sanity. So, I can't tell you how many times I've talked to people who have said, I know what I'm saying sounds crazy, or am I crazy? When they're telling their stories, and I share those no, no, it's not. I've heard this similar stuff before. But yeah, it's trust in yourself is one of the biggest things. It's difficult to do. With AI and social media and the news constantly blowing negativity into your face and everything like that, pitting everybody against each other all the time. It's
Well, I also like speaking to people who have had similar experiences to me as a way of calibration too. So I was listening to some Robert Monroe interviews of the Monroe Institute, and he was able to shed some light on some experiences that I've had. That doesn't mean I believe reflexively what someone else says, but when they're describing something similar to what I've experienced and they're sharing their perspective on it, it really informs me. So that's why I love having these conversations and hearing different people talk about similar things from different perspectives. It's really putting the picture together for me. Okay, now I'm not going to mention who, but we've got some very interesting people in the pipeline coming up along a similar line. And I like that we're really heading into this direction that we originally intended to go in. Now, not to say it hasn't been fantastic up to this point, but we're really honing in on what I see as the kind of base level question of this whole issue.
Yes, and you know what? I'll just give a little hint. We're soon going to have a conversation that I've wanted to have since our second or third episode.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about, and I'm looking forward to it.
It's taken a bit, but someone reached out to us, and I was just like, hell yes, let's talk. Anyways, that's for another day, right?
Many future days of talking about this topic until we finally understand what it is, which means we'll be doing the show forever, Mike.
Okay, so when people say stuff like that, it really rubs me the wrong way. Like, we're never going to figure it out, But at the end of the day, I do think we all end up in the same spot. We just take different roads to get there. But the idea is, if you think you can't, you won't.
Oh, wow. What a great
And that's
quote.
a total quote from Napoleon Hill.
Wow.
The Law of Success in 16 Lessons. Anyways, yes. What a great place
Nice.
to end that on. Isn't
Perfect,
it?
Mike.
As always, thanks for sticking around to the very end with us. We appreciate you guys and gals and everybody out there who's tuning in. Feel free to give us a comment or like if you check us out on YouTube, because that does help promote the conversations to other folks. Audio only. We see you out there, and we welcome you to email us too if you want to just give us a compliment or not compliment, whatever.
Yes.
The email address is pretty public as well. It's Universal Disclosure Podcast at proton.me. And if you want to join this conversation, if you're a spiritual leader out there, or if you got research that you want to present to the world, if you have a story or encounter, we're open to a lot of things. As long as you are UFO based, we can potentially have a conversation with you.
Oh, that's so good. Mike, as always, much love to you and to our audience. Please continue on this journey with us.